Thank you. My name is Yuvenali Shirima from Tanzania. My question is, how do international standards improve the quality of information in the public sector, and how does it improve the quality of information, contribute to building trust, strengthening accountability, and enhancing economic growth outcomes, especially in the current period of the global geopolitical tension and conflict such as Russia and Ukraine, and the Middle East tension involved the USA, Israel to Iran, which has a significant impact global supply chain, increase energy price, and contribute to inflation of our economy. Thank you.
Good questions to the panel. You can agree with X on what? David, but you're here. Let me start with
Okay, let me see if I can tackle the geopolitical one first. Standards outlive typically geopolitical issues. So if you look at the tensions that are happening around the world, there's guidance given out, for example, around the accounting implications, including the ethics implications for areas where there's conflict. So IESBA actually published material on the implications from an ethics point of view when the conflict erupted between Russia and Ukraine. So as standard setters, we do things to make sure that individuals are aware of, in our case it's ethics, but it could be financial reporting standards, it could be any kind of standard, that there is guidance that's provided to help organizations understand how to apply the existing standard in that particular set of facts and circumstances. So it's not that new standards are created, it's that the principles that exist actually take care of that and they help understand how that works. To answer the question around, why or how are international standards helpful from a growth or an economics perspective, I think I would answer that from a few perspectives. One is, and I think it's been alluded to this morning as well through some of the earlier panel conversations. I think it was Kenneth actually that was mentioning it, which is, when you've got consistent standards that are applied consistently around the world, they're audited consistently, and there's trust that's built in that. And that matters when it comes to access to capital. And that access to capital can be through a market, it can be through a lending institution, it can be through bondholders, it can be through anything. So I think that the benefits, the economic benefit, the tangible benefit that it brings is it opens up the door to access to capital. And unfortunately, it closes the door, conversely, if they're not followed. Because then the lenders or the investors look and say, well, how do I know I can trust what's coming out of this particular company or this particular jurisdiction? So I think international standards really do have a role to play in establishing baselines so that international markets can function properly. And that's the reason we've got the IFRS Foundation on both sides of those board. That's why they're there. So I think that in terms helps. The earlier question around international standards versus local standards and how do you bring those things together, well, there's already a mechanism that's in place around what your reporting obligations are as it relates to whether or not you use, for example, IFRS standards or whether or not you use local standards. And companies sometimes have to comply with both. So a big part of what ends up happening in this conversation is there's often conversations, and you've probably seen Emmanuel Faber, for example, who talks about sustainability standards. He's very vocal about the importance of harmonizing these standards around the world because he sees the benefit that comes out of it. We're really passionate about advocating the consistency of ethical standards being applied, and I've seen the same thing from the IASB when it comes to financial reporting standards. So I think that's a big part of why this becomes important in terms of economic growth to not just a company, but to a country as a whole, because obviously the country depends on the activity and the trade that happens within the company or within the country to actually make money. So hopefully I touched on all three of those questions, but I'll turn it over to Yakuba to talk about public sector.
Ok, merci. En fait, il faut savoir que en termes de contribution à la à la confiance, à la transparence.